Hey, Chael, Glenn Bell. Does Max Holloway have to give up one of his titles? I've heard you and Ariel talk about works and shoots and faces and heels, but I've never heard you talk about a guy keeping both of these titles. Now, the titles I'm talking about, Max Holloway gave himself the title of the nicest MFer in the octagon. And now I just watched the Hammer put a belt around him that says he's the baddest MFer in the octagon. So once again, in the rules, under these rules, in the world of angles and works and shoots, kayfabe and faces and heels, is Max Holloway allowed to be the nicest mother effer in the octagon and also be the baddest at the same time?
Oh my goodness, Glenn, I gotta tell you, I've missed you. It's great to see you, and I know the audience has missed you. As far as your point, I am not interpreting you as being literal. I am interpreting you as finding a way through the appearance of competitiveness to compliment Max, right? Max is that guy. He is the nastiest, most dangerous you're going to find. And he's going to cost you the most pain. Because he's not going to hit you one time and put you down. He's going to chop you up into slices before he brings you down, while being the most humble and soft-spoken and less arrogant and or cocky top draw fighter in the history of the sport. You're right about that. And I do want to speak to a more literal point that you had brought up, which is one guy having two titles simultaneously. Does he need to let one of them go? And it is yes, to answer you, yes. And it's important, if you're trying to get a fight, that you be able to answer that question before you ever come to the audience and or the opponent. You've got to be able to answer that question, because the promotion itself is going to want to know the answer. Like, there is no truth that Pereira is going to go down to 185 pounds to fight Dricus du Plessis. Now, the fight between Dricus and Pereira could happen someday. There's a lot that is going to come between it, but it could happen. And Dricus, with a couple of wins, is going to have cleaned out the division because of who he passed on the way up. He already has some of his hardest fights, to the point that he's doing rematches now. He's already doing rematches, one title defense in. Which is why, in a very short period, it is possible that Dricus has cleaned the division and what appears to be lapped it, which is meaning he beat the top guys twice, which would be his only way to get up to 205 pounds to challenge Alex. So I'm not telling you that fight will not happen. It will not happen. Now, I'm not telling you that fight can't. I will tell you openly, there is no scenario where they fight at 185 pounds. And the big mistake by Alex is he's already talked about that he's going to come down, make it one time, and never return. That is a death nail to negotiation within the company. Other organizations won't care. I don't know that I could convince you by explaining all the reasons to you that the UFC does care that it should matter enough to cancel a fight that people really want to see, but I can historically prove to you it does matter. So his moment that Alex revealed that he was going to come down and bounce, there is no negotiation at that point. There is nothing you could do. Hey guys, if I win my next one, if I win my next one and my next one, fight anybody you want. If I win my next three and I finish them all in the first round, like, there's nothing that you could say where you're going to get them to say yes. As soon as you reveal, you're going to come down once. And it's also a dangerous recipe, by the way. And a lot of this is more subconscious than conscious. But I would submit for you that Volkanovski, who was this close, and according to many, including a licensed judge that night, to beating Islam Makhachev, right? I mean, he just needed that little nudge. You're playing a game of inches at this point. You're playing a game of millimeters at this point. But can we agree that was as close of a title fight as we've had in recent memory? And I would just submit for you, where do you find the more? Where do you find more? What do I do? Do I need to sleep a little bit better? Did I need to run just a little bit further each day? Did I need to jump just a little bit more rope? Like, what is it that I needed to do to get that little bit more that we're discussing. And again, it would be subconscious. I don't think that Volk knew it or ever thought about it, but he needed to give up his other belt. That's what. Volk wakes up the morning of the fight. Regardless of what happens that night, when he wakes up the next morning, he's champion of the world. That's because he kept the 45-pound title, which is where, and was talking about number one contenders, and he even put some guys together, right? Hey, Emmett and Rodriguez, you guys go fight one another. You guys take care of this. I'll come in. I'll take on the winner. I mean, he's keeping that division alive. He's keeping it going. He was not just bluffing or pandering. He was sincerely going to return to 145. And so now, got a foot in both pools. And it was a problem. When push came to shove, it became a problem. That little tiny nudge. So it is important that the guy drops his strap. But I think that you're seeing it right now, played out. That was a great example that I just gave you. I'll stand by it. But the whole reason you come to me, right, Glenn? You can't get insight like this anywhere else. But I also will tell you we're seeing it more recent than that fight of Volkanovski-Islam Part 1. We're seeing it right now. Ilia Topuria said, hey, Max, you're coming down. You're a champion. Put up your belt. Why on earth would he not? I mean, that is a perfectly reasonable thing for Ilia Topuria to say. Which, by the way, I don't know that you need a response to, Glenn. If a champion is fighting, it doesn't need to be discussed if the belt is on the line. This is not Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, NWA 1987. The belt is always on the line. Always. But not only was Topuria not sure if Max's was, turns out it wasn't. It wasn't. So you talk about, do you gotta let one go? Well, the promotion would agree with you. And to the extent that the promotion would prevent somebody, or at least not encourage, prevent's a little bit stronger word, to having both belts in the first place. Right? There is no reason that Max should be at 45 with Topuria and not defending the BMF. And Max would agree with that, by the way. So, where does Max go from there? Because Max, much like Volkanovski, will wake up the following day as champion. And if you're out there collecting hardware, I think we can all agree the prestige, if you want the hardest one to get, the one that is the least obtainable, the least obtainable, hardest belt that we have ever seen in Dana White's time within the UFC is the BMF. It has been contested less times, 3 for 3. It's been put up 3 times. All 3 times, greatest fight of the card. All 3 times nominated for Fight of the Year candidates. All 3 times absolute sold-out venues with records in some demographic, whether it was Livegate at the time of that year. So it's a smashing hit. And I'm just not convinced that if you gave a fighter the choice of the two, that he doesn't choose the BMF. And while it doesn't have the lineage right now of, say, the Olympic Games, which is something that's also very obscure, it will over time. Or at least it has the potential. That has the potential to be the Holy Grail, to be the one. We're not there yet, but again, with time, and when you're Max and you've already had the 45-pound belt, you're going to wake up with the BMF and you could return to 55, right? I mean, Max doesn't really have anything to do with 145 pounds if he doesn't get past Topuria. There will never be another Max Holloway fight at this weight class. He will only be a 55-pounder moving forward if he doesn't beat Topuria. But now he gets to be a 55-pounder with a title that he will get to defend. And it's a very interesting spot. And it's because of those reasons that even in the short term, if you wish it was belt versus belt, Max versus Ilia, in the long term, you'll be glad it wasn't, and you'll understand why this decision was made.